Okay, so the very first thing that I'm thinking of is actually, I go back and forth all the time, so let me kind of do this one out of order here, is the insulation. Let's go out and take a look at the building real fast, and let me explain what it is that I'm thinking.
Let's talk heating. So, as you've seen in previous videos, trying to heat this entire building is an absolute waste. This building is not insulated, and to actually insulate the inside of it seems to be extremely labor intensive and cost prohibitive, because even if you just put a skin along the inside to insulate it, you still have a huge area to heat, and the amount of heat you need is directly proportional to the amount of volume that you have. So the more volume that you have, the more heat you have to have, and the more money you have to spend to heat it. So we want to make things as small as possible to heat. We talked about the geothermal and how to move stuff out. Heat pumps are another idea that we could use. But let's talk about insulation that needs to be done. I'm standing pretty much in an area that right now I'm envisioning we'd actually run some vertical, kind of create a wall right here with a door on it. So there'll be a door here. Just try to visualize this for you. Come in the door here. There'll be another door right here that allows you to go into lane 3 and lane 4, or the main area. Then we're going to have our fridge is going to be right here. And then you would have insulation going all the way down this lane, and you'd actually enclose this entire thing all the way over with whether it be double layer of plastic or polycarbonate. The area right here will actually have to be kind of framed in, and then have to have insulation here all the way over to here. This seam right here is not airtight. None of the seams in this building are airtight. We'd have to come over to this structure right here, run up, and then we're going to have lane 1 and lane 2 is already here. So let's look at those real quick. Okay, now we're looking at lane 1, which is yet to be built, and lane 2. Now in another video we're going to talk about the fact that this lane is going to get rebuilt. It's going to get redesigned to actually be specific for microgreens. So I'm going to skip that in this video. Visually, the leading candidate I have right now is polycarbonate siding, but it's very expensive, and I would prefer to find a way not to do it. But I think it would look sharp, be easy to clean, easy to maintain, easy to replace, and it's extremely effective as far as its insulating value goes. Better than the double layer plastic. So I'm thinking triple wall polycarbonate. And in my mind, what I'm visualizing, again, I talked to you about this area here that's the microgreen processing to keep Mrs. Martian nice and warm. A warm wife is a happy wife. And then we would actually probably go tight against the structure. So on lane 1, the structure is going to come over here. Each of these lanes, for those that are wanting to do calculations, the lane itself is 44 inches wide. That's from outside to outside. So the beds and everything in it are 44. So your outside dimensions are 44. Lane 2, excuse me, is 12 feet tall. Lane 1 is going to be 8 feet tall. Both lane 1 and lane 2 are 60 feet long. So you'll need those dimensions if you're going to do some calculations. And what I'm thinking is, the outside will have polycarbonate that'll be tight along the outside of that lane. And what I mean by tight, let me go over here, move the camera. What I mean by tight is that we actually put the polycarbonate right up and we mount it directly to the side of the lane itself. So on this side, there'd be no access to the lane. It'd be a solid sheet of polycarbonate. If we wanted to get crazy, we could build little frames with some hydraulics on it that you could lift in here. But that's not what we're thinking. That's not what I'm thinking right now anyway. This side would be tight. The outside of lane 1 would be tight. And then move the camera again here. This would be an opening into the microgreen processing area, just a pure opening, no door or anything. And it wouldn't be enclosed. You would just have pure access. So everything from the language I'm going to use from the tight side to the other tight side is totally open. So you have full access. So Mrs. Martian could come in, or any operator could come in, you'd have full access. You'd have to reach over here to get to the other side. You'd have to reach over here to get to the other side. But the current leading solution for the microgreen lanes is a rotating Ferris wheel. So you're going to have a little button here. The thing slowly rotates. Take your stuff off. If you want to reach the other side, just rotate through, get to the other side. That's the current leading solution space for that. So walking this all out, you'd have lane 1 here, lane 2. This would all be totally open. So you'd have this entire volume inside of here that you'd have to heat. And my initial numbers are somewhere around 50,000 BTU per hour to heat this. So we'd prefer to not have to put that much heat into it, because heat costs money and we want to reduce how much money it takes. So back here, we'd go tight again against this backside with polycarbonate, and then again the shelf would end here, so you'd run tight along here. Tight up top, tight on the side, completely open in the middle, and close on the end. And then at the top, let me show you the tops here. The tops are flat on top of the shelving. So it'd probably be best if we put it at an angle, so raised up one side and then brought it down to the 8-foot side. Let me see if I can't try to illustrate that in the camera. How that's parallel. So if we raise this side a little bit, then we could bring down the polycarbonate like a roof, like a slanted roof. And I think that might be, the solution that we end up going with. If some challenges that I see with that are, first, if you go with polycarbonate, it's pretty much a permanent, I'll call it semi-permanent, because you could take it down, but it's essentially a permanent solution. And that's not really what we wanted. We wanted to have things open up in the summertime. That seems like a drawback to me, but as I kind of process through the idea of geothermal, we can't afford to put air conditioners in here. That's one of the reasons why we have a building that is not translucent. Only a little bit of light comes through here, and therefore not as much heat comes in here. So it's cooler in here than a normal greenhouse, so we don't have to cool it. But if we put the geothermal tubes in here with the polycarbonate insulation, that insulation helps keep it cool just as much as it helps keep it warm. So if we do have a good geothermal solution, then we could potentially just leave the polycarbonate up and life would be good. So it would be cool enough. And if we're running the fish tanks and everything into the ground as well, it should all work, I think. So anyway, there's the idea of insulation. We could do double wall plastic, but building this area out for the microgreen processing seems not like double wall plastic. It may not be the right thing to do. In addition, we've used wood in the system and it gathers mildew and mold on it. So we're going to try to start getting rid of wood as much as we can afford to. Plastic structure, metal structure, that type of stuff is what we're going to be looking at.
All right, so one of the last things we need to consider when doing insulation is thinking about the outside of the building and how to protect that frost line from coming up too close to the building and getting water penetration through the dirt coming into the building underneath. So one of the ideas that I've read about is to actually take and kind of point it out here to you, outside of the building here, put 4-foot sections of the foam board insulation you put in your house, dig out the ground and recess those down in the ground and put a piece of plastic over the top of it, cover it back up with dirt. And that would help move your frost line out away from the building as well as your moisture line, so that you're not getting a lot of cold ground coming up from underneath, or getting water penetration that then freezes and then sucks all the heat out of your building. So you're moving that frost line out, helping insulate the ground of your building and getting more heat that way. Now the challenge, it's always a challenge with me, oh man, that's my life, is right here. Remember that French drain I put in right next to the building so it drains everything away real nice and easy? Yeah, all that rock would have to be dug up, the French drain would have to be dug up. We'd almost have to get like a vacuum to get all that rock out of there. Because I'm not buying all that rock again. Then we'd have to excavate that off, which we can do no problem with the box scraper I have, and then put the insulation board down. That job is basically all manual labor. It's not a complicated thing. It's just a lot of manual labor to get all that. I'm not sure we're going to get that this year. I would like to. I think that would make a big difference. But I'm curious to know what you think. One of the things that we have to consider when we're choosing the insulation solution is how we're going to store it. So if it can be taken down, which would be nice, it has to be taken down, be able to be folded up or stored some way. There is last year's insulation solution. It's laid out, and I haven't had a chance to really deal with it or clean it or anything. So when you're considering your solutions, suggestions, make sure you're thinking about how do we store it, because right now that's a mess, and I don't really want to do that. All right, so like I was saying, you have each of the lanes here, right? These lanes are about 60 feet long, they're about 12 feet high, and they're almost 4 feet wide. They're like 44 inches, actually. I'll get you the exact numbers. 44 inches there, sorry. And then we have two of them, right? There's lane 1 right here and lane 2 right here. All right, lane 1 is going to max out at 8 feet. It's still going to be 60 feet long, and it'll still be 44 inches wide. And there's going to be the walkway that's in between them still. So here's what I'm thinking, as far as the picture goes, is that we build the polycarbonate and we put it tight along the outside wall here. So based on what I found, you can get the polycarbonate sheeting in about 6 foot by 12 foot sections, 6 foot wide by 12 foot tall sections. So that would be pretty cool. And then we build structure that connects the top here and then these two over here, or maybe we just run everything at a diagonal off the side of the building, or off the other side of lane 1. Now this is all inside of the building. It's built tight on the shelves. So the green represents the polycarbonate, and the brown represents the shelving inside of it. Now for the microgreen processing, the third thing, what we could do, since it actually starts right here, as I just showed you in the video, we could run this kind of down like this, try to get this right angle, or correct. There we go. That a little bit better. No. Not very good drawing here, sorry. There we go. Okay, so what we can do is we'd have the polycarbonate go over everything. Now, I'm looking at a few different things, but polycarbonate seems to be the best one. Let me talk to you about what I looked at. So the first, wrong color, throw that one away. First thing I looked at was the double layer poly. And that's essentially just putting 2 pieces of plastic over the top and then blowing it up with air in between. There's lots of YouTubers out there that are doing this type of thing. Another one is a double wall polycarbonate. And that's a very popular building material for greenhouses. It has a significantly improved R factor over the double poly. Well, actually, no, sorry. The double wall doesn't have significantly improved over the double poly. This is just plastic sheeting. These are polycarbonates. But it does have easier to work with properties. It's a big sheet, pretty easy to install. The triple wall polycarbonate is another one that I looked at. And that one seems to kind of be where I'm leaning towards, is the triple wall polycarb. I've seen some structures built with it. It's more like working with wood than it is working with plastic. But kind of some of the trades here is the double wall poly would probably go up over the top of all this, and then we pin it to the ground, and then we take it down every year. The polycarbonate is more of a semi-permanent structure. And what I mean by that is you might take the, you probably leave the top on it and the far side, which is on the exterior wall. And then you might actually take these ones off in the summertime, so you take them off their connector and then go store them somewhere, or maybe you just leave the whole thing connected. Now, before I forget, another thing that we have to do is we need to redo the ventilation that goes on this, because in the wintertime we get lots of condensation from the humidity that's in the room, and it gets cold outside and it condenses on it. So what we need to do, this is on the very top, we're going to have, there's options here too. We can either do the dehumidifier in line, like what we did last year, only now we're sucking off the top because that's where the humidity goes. Or, and now we jump over to the heating solution, we do something like geothermal heating, where we have the heat pipe going out of the building and then coming back. It would be underneath here. Hopefully that makes some sense. It wouldn't come to the top. This would be a big loop that goes underground and then comes back up somewhere inside of here. And if we did that, we'd be pumping that warmer or that cooler air through a warmer area, so it would heat that air up and it could hold more humidity, more moisture. I'm not sure that's the way we want to go. So, another thing for insulation, let me get rid of this. You can always go back and pause the video and look at these things. Another thing for insulation, so if this is our building, sorry for the crude drawing here. That was Bandit in the background. Here's our door. One of the things I noticed is last year is just water penetration coming on the outside of the building, coming through the inside. So again, thanks to many subscribers out there like yourself, what's recommended is to take some of that foam insulation, the foam board, and actually run it along the outside of the building, cover it with plastic, and then bury it underground. So your dirt would be on top of it, the water would roll over the top of it, and then I think those things are 4 feet wide. So then you actually extend the building out by 4 feet, and your frost line moves out, and then you have a barrier here, a thermal barrier that helps protect everything inside of the building from getting wet, through seepage, as well as keeps it warmer. So I think that's a great idea. There's just one hiccup. Remember that French drain? It currently runs right where we would want that foam board to be. So we'd have to dig up the French drain and then move it out. We'd have to move the French drain over outside of the poly, out of the foam, so that the water runs off the building. I don't know if you can see this. The water and snow would run off the building, and then they get into the French drain, and it would run out the system that way. So that's not a huge problem. That's just a lot of work. Digging, you'd have to dig up all the rocks that I put in, collect all the rocks because I don't want to buy more rocks. Dig up the tubing. Once we get the rocks out, that's not a huge deal. Redig the trench, just manual labor, just hard work. And then move it out, put the foam in. I think the foam board is probably pretty important that we try to get that done this year. That's all part of the insulation. So let's go over this. All right. All right, so when we're doing engineering, some of the first things that we need to do are look at requirements, right? So for insulation, our very first requirement is that we keep the plants somewhere between 50 and 60 degrees Fahrenheit when it's as low as -8 Fahrenheit outside. Now that's where we got to last year, and anything below that is really truly a corner case. So originally I designed to 8 Fahrenheit, so now I'm dropping it down to -8 because we actually saw that, and last year was like the worst winter we've had in a very long time. So we want to have insulation that with some amount of heat coming in, so some amount of heat coming in keeps it at 50 to 60 Fahrenheit. Now we want to minimize, we want to keep that really, really low. We want to reduce heat somewhere below 50,000 BTU per lane. Okay? So our insulation solution in mass needs to keep the grow lanes somewhere between 50 and 60 degrees Fahrenheit when it gets as low as -8 Fahrenheit outside. It needs to have a heat input that keeps it there that's significantly less than 50,000 BTU per hour. Sorry, that's BTU per hour per lane. So what we mean by that is if we enclose lane 1 and 2, then that enclosure needs to take less than 50,000 BTU per hour because this drives our total cost, and we need to reduce costs as much as possible. So another requirement, it has to be done by 11/11. We can't choose something that takes a very long time to do. $4 need to be as little as possible. This one's going to be expensive. So to give a number, I'd like it, the total solution, if you were to take the cost and run it out, let's say over a year, 6 months. 6 months at $70 per week. That's the total cost that we want to be below. So what is that? Let's get the calculator. I haven't had to use this guy since college. Okay, so 6 months. There are 4 weeks per month and $70 per week. Well, yeah, so $1,680. I know that ain't going to happen. So we want to get, I'll put it this way, we want to get as close to this number as possible so it pays for itself in 1 year. That's what we want to do. So these solutions right here, while I think the polycarbonate is really cool, I'm not convinced that it's the right thing to do yet because it is going to be expensive. Okay, let's see here. 5th requirement, access. So remember we have the fish tanks, and then we have the growing area, and then microgreen lanes are going to be completely redone. So we need to be able to access those areas by one person to get the microgreen trays out easily. So this isn't easy. Let me describe what easy would not be. Is I need to lift up a door by myself, and then I need to reach in here, and I need to somehow grab this microgreen tray, and then drop this down, and then hold that back up, or have hydraulics on it, or stuff like that. I need to be able to pull that microgreen tray out really easily and get it to the processing area. And that's why combining both lanes seemed to be the right thing to do for me, because you can walk in the middle of them and have easy access to both lane 1 and lane 2, or lane 3 and lane 4, conversely. So you also have to be able to get down to those fish tanks. Remember the fish tanks underneath? You have to feed them. So Parker, big idea submitted by one of our followers here, Parker, had an idea that we can actually put in PVC tubes that go in between the actual racking. So if you have, like, here's a lane and here's a bed, and then, you have another one right next to it, put a little tube going down where you can put the fish food at right up here, and the fish food goes down, and you don't actually have to bend over to put the fish food in. Mrs. Martian, aka the operator, wants to be able to visually inspect underneath the actual grow lane itself. So we can't close it off. She needs to be able to look down to see if there's any dead fish on a normal basis. We don't want her getting down on her knees and having to crawl along on the gravel. So we kind of want it where you can just look in there. So access is important. So let's see here. 50 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit down to -8. If I had to, if someone's going to do the calculations. By the way, I hope those of you out in school, the teachers and stuff that have reached out to me, I hope maybe this is a good problem for you in your classes. You solve this problem. This is pretty good stuff here. I'd be willing to go and say that at -8 Fahrenheit, what I really care about is that the temperature is somewhere around 40 Fahrenheit, so that this is, kind of make it this way. This is more your norm. Where, let's say, it's somewhere around 15 Fahrenheit outside on average, and then this is your extreme case, where it's -8 Fahrenheit outside, be willing to loosen it up and say, just make sure it doesn't freeze, and keep it somewhat warm out there. So 40 Fahrenheit would be good. So, okay, I think this is it for insulation. These are kind of some of the numbers. What I'm hoping for in this video series is that, just like we've been doing for the last few months now, is that we have great conversation in the comment thread. But I also hope that you reach out to me via email at trm@TheRealMartian.com and submit your ideas for this. Oh, there were some ideas. Well, sorry, there's a few more requirements. Okay, rodent-free is another requirement. And then another one after that is clean. Okay, so what do I mean by this? I've had more than one viewer suggest that we use hay bales inside of the building. Sadly, while the insulation value of the hay bales would be fantastic, they will bring in lots of rodents. We're actually starting to have a little mice problem right now. If we put hay in there, we would have mice all over the place. We basically create Shangri-La for rodents. So we want to make sure we don't do that. So whatever solutions you come up with, they're not going to be ones that have like hay bales or organic things in them to insulate. That's just not going to work. Those microgreens, they have to stay clean, right? We don't want a lot of bacteria, which is the next thing. Is it does need to be something that either can be cleaned or is somewhat clean in nature. So that's where the plastic and the polycarbonates come in. They stick a lot better than like foam board all the way along the outside. Wouldn't work unless you coat it with plastic or something, because that foam board, just mold and fungus and bacteria, they're all going to just embed themselves in that. And then you're going to have that everywhere, and you're not going to be able to clean it because it's porous, and that's going to be a big problem. So, okay, there's the requirements. So again, I'm hoping that this inspires all of the engineering brains out there, the mechanical brains, or people just who want to use your brains to help us come up with a really cool solution. Cost is a big factor. Schedule is a big factor. And you have some good requirements here. Well, if you're a systems engineer, you know that these aren't the world's greatest requirements, but they're good enough to get you started. Okay, that's it for this video on insulation. Tune in next time, and we'll talk about heating. Thanks for following along. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button if you like, and your little bell will notify you when we put up new videos. You can also join us on Facebook and Twitter. You seem to get notified better if you're on there. In the meantime, everyone, this is Real Martian. Out.